Okay, we're good. Live.
Awesome. So this week's focus is on defining ethics as a group, exploring how ethics shape leadership, and how ethical behavior is reflected in a public leadership. Mm.
Ethics, I guess. Well, in the book, it was just standards of moral conduct, just morals, beliefs based on your culture, where you came from, family, religion, the government laws. Just what you think is right and wrong.
Yeah.
I feel like the ethics of the leader is also like the moral is also going to end up being like having a lot to do with the culture of the organization. 'Cause it all starts at the top, and like if you're all following a good guy, it's likely to trickle down. But if he's like ethically incorrect person, you could call it, it's going to set an overall bad company culture, and followers aren't really going to want to follow or question his leadership.
Makes you wonder why people, sorry, real quick, why people follow Hitler. You know, obviously what he was doing was wrong. Like, were they all blind or something? I don't know. It's crazy. You're going to say something? Sorry, Sonia.
Yeah, no, you're fine. I was just gonna say, like, to me, like, ethics is just doing the right thing, and I think because the right thing isn't always a black and white thing, it has to be about intention, like in the sense of leadership, like in leadership, like in ethics. Like, I think it's just about having the right intention because the right and the wrong isn't black and white almost ever. So I think that, like, as a leader, ethics is about intention.
I think culturally
like
too.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Are you sure? You can
go. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I really liked how James put it. I mean, an old example is like Enron, how people were really confused as to how this huge successful company like had all these structural issues because, people were top to bottom, making sales they shouldn't have been and miscalculating, profits. And a current example is like Wells Fargo, how they were charging people for accounts they didn't have or didn't want and didn't need. And it was like a cultural organizational choice that like, hey, this is okay, even though it's not. Like, ethically, it's not okay, but as an organization, these are the choices we're making. And I feel like it's interesting how that can happen, like, to an entire organization, that they can be like, okay, yeah, this is probably a little into the gray area, and we're just going to run with it.
OGL 200?
Oh, yeah.
Took that class too.
Yeah, I think that's pretty sad. I think it's sad that, like, people will, like, be unethical to, like, for the sake of, like, getting ahead. And, like, that's talked about. Like, it's, like, an abuse of power, really. And I just think it's kind of crazy. It's just, like, to make an extra dime or whatever, people are like, oh, let's just do this even though it's wrong and we know it's wrong. Like, we're going to do it anyway just so we can be ahead. And that's so sad because power is corruptive. Like, it always will be, like, but it's just the lengths that people will go to. Like, that's kind of messed up.
Well, I feel like I bring this up every week, but I swear in our book it said, like, all these qualities of unethical people are, like, what help people get to leadership positions. It was, like, the first chapter we read about, that leaders oftentimes are, like, narcissistic, selfish, and that's why they get to where they get to, because they are, like, kind of not playing by the same rule book as everyone else.
I think that's culturally, culturally, it's just because I've worked with leaders who weren't the greatest leaders, and they were definitely from different cultures, and so different cultures don't have what's right or what's wrong or how to treat people of different genders or anything like that. So that's an element too when it comes to ethics, because we can't say that, like, yeah, what Hitler did was wrong, but, like, culturally though, like, we weren't there, so culturally that was okay for them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What was the other question?
It wants us to just kind of talk about how ethics shapes leadership and how ethical behavior is reflected in public leadership, and then also just kind of like the defining leadership ethics. Sorry. But
Everyone's scared to talk now.
So it wants us to define ethical leadership. Is that what I got out of that?
yeah.
I mean, I guess it's just leading with like, honesty and transparency and, putting, I guess in my mind, it's doing the right thing for not only like your shareholders, but like for your employees as well. Like what's going to benefit the most people.
Leading with integrity.
Yep. And like I said earlier, I think it's about having good intention.
How ethics shape leadership. Yeah, it just reflects in what the laws, I guess, or rules they place into their leadership. It's a reflection of them as a leader, what they think is right or wrong.
I mean, another good example, I don't know if it was this class, all of these OGL classes blend together. But like Volkswagen cheating on their emissions tests for like years and years, and their CEO like having to quit, and it's like, how did they like, as a company, like how did he say, okay, this is fine, we're just going to continue to cheat on it, like I want my mechanics to come up with the system that they can cheat, I want the people doing the tests to fudge it. Like how much leadership did you really have to put into it to make those like unethical choices?
That's like a pretty bad thing that he lied about too, because like the whole point of like hybrid cars and all that is to people buy them because they're like, all right, I want to be good for the environment. Like I'll make whatever, I'll spend this extra money to have to minimize my footprint on the environment, and they pretty much slashed all their numbers to make them look like they're a cleaner car than the competition and charge more and still get the sales. So that guy really he made a choice.
I think power is just such a overwhelming thing for people, because like they like with that kind of power, like in like big companies, like you can get a lot of money from like just having the power, and like, but I think that like it's sad that like so many people got to like you were saying, James, like so many people get there from like making those wrong choices or like kind of being a certain way that isn't necessarily great, but so many people have done it before that like it's like, oh well, this is the path to become a leader, like I'll just do this too. And I just think it's sad because I don't think it has to be that way. Like I think that it's more common for it to be like a bad like way to get to leadership, and it's just kind of weird.
Well, Spider-Man said, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah. Thank you, Spider-Man.
We're at 8 minutes. I feel like it's probably a slow fade. They thought they could get away with one thing, and it keeps on like piling on. They could get away with more and more until they're
also just the expectations. You don't want to seem like you can't handle the power once you get it. So it's like, as you were saying, like it's one thing. It's like, all right, we're kind of behind this quarter. We're gonna sweep this under the rug and kind of make us look a little better than we are. Then you see how easy it is. Then you're like, all right, not only are we going to sweep that under the rug every quarter, we're going to inflate this too and get those promotions.
And I think this is like a big deal in like politics as well. Like people reach a position of power, and then other people are going to come to them and be like, hey, do this one way so that, and we'll do this for you. Like, and I think politics is a big thing too, not even just like big organizations.
Well, I think politics,
individuals.
Are you breaking up?
I think so. Mm-hmm. Sonia, are you there?
I'm here. Sorry.
I think politics is like an interesting one from what you were saying too, is like all these politicians, when they make these promises, they don't even like have to necessarily agree with all of the policy that they roll out, but like 40% of the stuff they say, they just have to be like, all right, we just have to be on this side of the issue to maintain the demographic and to get those votes. And like, yeah, I mean, it's just, those guys they just constant readings of polls and then go out there and say what pretty much needs to be said. And that's their job. Interesting.
Does anyone ever watch Family Guy?
Yep.
Once in a blue
They
moon.
made an episode where like Lois becomes like some kind of representative of something. She was like, I want to do this the right way. And then she gets there and like people are like, oh, well, I'll buy you this coat. I'll do this for you if you vote this way. And it's just kind of like, oh my, like, and like she even goes corrupt from it. Like I think power is just so corrupt. It's so corruptive. But I think that like, I don't think like it has to be all bad. Like I do think people can handle power well and be ethical. I just think it's more talked about when it's bad because people like to talk about what's bad going on in the world. Like what's good, what's going well, no one sees a problem with. So they're like, oh, but people like to talk about problems more. And so I think we hear about it more almost.
Well, good
Yeah,
news is
people naturally remember the negative more so than the positive. That's why there's more negative Yelp reviews even.
Yeah.
Sorry,
What is
what were
that?
you saying, James?
Are you on video or is it just this picture of you?
No, I'm just standing like that right now.
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm back.
Film dress.
I was like from high school. I don't know why I still have that. Sorry, what was that?
Trying to think. I forget. It'll come back to me though.
Thinking about it, I don't remember who made this point about like people following Hitler, and I think, I've read that, what kind of led to that is people were, they were following orders, and at first the orders were like, okay, let me just guard this shop, let me just watch these people, let me just do these easy things that weren't really unethical. They were just kind of toying the line between like discrimination and not, and it just kind of progressed. And I mean, where do you draw the line between saying, hey, my leader is being unethical, and saying that this isn't right when everyone else is doing it,
Mm-hmm.
Well, I believe Hitler also took advantage of like the situation overall. Because I don't know where I heard it. This might have been like high school history or some crap, but like the economic situation in Germany was so bad that like the only way that a lot of people can even sleep and eat was if they joined the military. And since he's the president, he obviously had control of the military, but that's how he got everyone to join. Because it was like, all right, sleep on the street and starve, or become a soldier in food and shelter.
Yeah, he a lot of his rise to power was based on like telling the German people like, hey, we are a proud people, and I know we've come on hard times, we lost World War I, but we deserve better. And he was kind of playing on their like collective sense of like a race, like, hey, we're a great country, let's show everyone we are. And that's kind of how that snowballed, because obviously patriotism isn't a bad thing, but in this case he used it to kind of build like the empire.
Is that patriotism or nationalism what he did?
I
would say it's nationalism.
Yeah, at that point.
What's funny though is that Hitler isn't even German. He's not even from there. So he kind of just like, took over. Yeah, he just took over a country that was in the ruts after World War I, and then he was like, oh, I can make you better. And,
where was he from?
Was he from Austria?
Austria. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Huh.
It would be really interesting, like, because our perspective of this is that it was so bad and like everything was so wrong. And like, I think Nicole, you said this earlier, it was just like, to him, like it wasn't wrong. Like, and so it would just be very interesting to see like where his ethics standpoint was. And like, if he thought like to go back and really like, if he could say like what he thought he was doing was ethical and was right, or if like he was actually just a bad person with bad intentions, like to like go back and like understand like what was going through his brain would be so interesting. Because I mean, we all feel strongly about things and like we have our standpoint. So that's just what he was doing. So it's just very interesting.
It's all perspective. And I kind of like, did you guys ever watch like the Hunger Games back in the day?
No.
Really?
Okay, well, so basically like they're the rebels, but like, and if you think about it, like, the capital is like our government, and it's all perspective because, we're all about patriotism and all for, the U.S., but like if we were to bring that into our context, like what side would we be on? It really depends. So,
I mean, to quote another Spider-Man, like, you think you're right, but you're wrong and that makes you dangerous, like that's really something to think about. Like you really honestly think you're right, like you're going to do a lot of things to, you know, try and make everyone see that, whether you are right or wrong ethically.
Yeah, it's like the saying, knowing just enough to be dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Also Spider-Man?
No, but I mean, I could look up some like Batman quotes or something.
Easily
Try to be Spider-Man.
All right, we're at 15. Any last words?
I don't think so.
Did we touch upon the last question? How it's reflected in public leadership?
I think so. Like I think just talking about like Hitler politics, I think that kind of hits it in a way.
I feel like when you're in a public position, there's just more, the power is more distributed and structured, that hopefully there isn't abuse of power, even though it seems like there is. But yeah, I guess that's all, folks. Checks and balances, yes. Alrighty, I'm stopping.
Back.
All right.